5 years ago, we met Joe Pereira in his home in Bandra. We wanted him to play the tunes he played in Hindi film orchestras. He wanted to talk about the music he played in the bands of the 50s. Frank Ferdinand, Mickey Coria, Anthony Gonzalez, Chick Chocolate and many others. Their music was jazz. Its notes had travelled the world to reach the shores of Bombay in the 1930s. Its syncopated sound drawing crowds in cosmopolitan cities, creating India's own jazz legends and giving Bombay another layer to its multicultural history.
Tajmahal Foxtrot or Tajmahal, a Foxtrot, was a song written or recorded in 1936 by this group of guys, most of them. They're called Cricket Smith, and that's Cricket Smith and his Symphonians. And the lyric is pretty ambiguously phrased, so you're not certain whether it's about Shah Jahan's mausoleum, the mausoleum that he built, or whether it's about the hotel that hired them. I'm fascinated by it because the guy who's not in this picture is the composer, and his name is Mena Silas. And Mena Silas was a Baghdadi Jew whose family had lived in Bombay for at least a generation. And so this is the first jazzy tune with roots that are firmly planted in the subcontinent. And just the title is so intriguing. It sort of represents an east-west balance that Bombay really likes so much.
The story of Bombay's first jazz track, Tajmahal Foxtrot, becomes the title of writer Naresh Fernandez's superb history of Bombay's jazz age. Through raw pictures and vivid accounts, it tells the story of growing musicians as they became the city's jazz legends. And it gives us the perfect opportunity to explore a heady period in Bombay's history.
We're on what in the 50s was called the Churchgate Street extension, and it was an extension because all of this was actually reclaimed land. It was part of the Back Bay reclamation scheme, and by the mid-40s or the 50s, I think all these restaurants began to appear here, and many of them had bands which played in the popular style of the day, which was jazz. And so here is Gaylord. Across the road, which is now Mocha, used to be Berries. As we walk around the corner, we'll see Venice, and across the road from that is the Ritz, and then down the road is the Ambassador Hotel, where for a long time the reigning deity was a fantastic pianist called Dizzy Sal, and then he was replaced by Tony Pinto, who was there for more than a decade.
It was first known as the Ambassador Quartet, but then it was changed to Tony Pinto Jazz Quartet, and we were considered as one of the foremost bands in India. We used to play practically all the concerts and all that used to take place. All these musicians that used to come from abroad, like the Duke Ellington Band, we used to have sessions with the musicians after working hours. Dave Brubeck came down in '58. And Louis Armstrong. So all these restaurants had bands, and you could go there. There's be jam sessions on Sundays, so you could walk in any place and you have the band playing there. If you were a musician, you could join in and jam out with the band. And those were the kind of days that we had before.
This was strangely music that wasn't animated by liquor. Bombay has a state of prohibition that was gradually introduced from the 1930s. Even though you couldn't get liquor officially, many people drank hooch in what were called aunties bars. And there was an aunties bar actually right at the end of this street that was run by a guy It couldn't have been an auntie's bar because it was run by a guy called Kareem. And much later, Blas Gonsalves, who played around the corner at Venice, wrote a song called Kareem's Blues. He also composed a song called Down the Back Bay about the reclamation scheme that was happening up the road at Nariman Point.
Many of those early jazz tracks haven't survived. What have our memories? Jahangir Dalal and his friends started Blue Rhythm, Bombay's first jazz magazine. Its cover is designed by a not yet famous artist, Mali Gobai.
Basically, Niranjan Jhaveri, Soli Sorabji, Kura Gazdar, Yusuf Karmali, and we would listen to jazz records at each other's houses. We first started a jazz magazine when we were in college, at St. Xavier's College, in 1953, and the first issue was just a cyclo-styled issue. Well, you know, the jazz was played in India, mostly by musicians from Goa and the Anglo-Indian community in the late 20s, but in the 30s, the Tajmahal Hotel in Bombay, they hired an all-Negro band actually, but one doesn't use the word anymore. The Taj and the first really authentic jazz musician from America who played in Bombay.
The iconic Taj led the way. In a well-researched book on the history of the Taj, historian Sharda Dwivedi dedicates an interesting chapter to the entertainment sponsored by the hotel. Prominent in this were cabaret acts and jazz bands.
In the 1929 depression had taken place, and the best way to attract new clientele was, of course, food and entertainment. The Taj and Greens were very big in entertainment. It started with cabarets being introduced, and one of those who introduced cabarets into the Taj was a lady called Catherine Courtney. And later on, of course, Catherine Courtney came to be known as Madame Pompadour. This is her with the Pompadour Funnies. And the other one who really performed, a well-known name, was Boris Lysanovich, who was a Russian aristocrat. He came here with his wife Kira. Then along with the cabarets, of course, came music. And I think the Taj was the first to bring in, as I said, some of the greatest jazz musicians from the West. And the first one to come here was Leon Abbey, very well-known jazz musician, and they took Bombay completely by storm. Look at all these. Cricket Smith, there was Teddy Weatherford, Mink Devine, this is Kenna, who was a local person, and there was Chick Chocolate also, and Mickey Korea, who were local Goans, but very, very talented.
Look at the interesting backdrops, which
Absolutely.
And architecturally changed to fit the mood as well.
Correct, and for even at that time, the Taj had a revolving stage. In order to move with the times and to adapt the Art Deco movement which had taken the city by storm, the ballroom, the harbour bar, the rendezvous were all redone in the Art Deco style.
Jazz had become the spirit of the time, influencing a rise in the Art Deco style of architecture in Bombay, seen best in its theatres. Most of the native jazz musicians were grown Christians who had migrated to Bombay for work. In the evenings, they would perform in hotels and return at night to staying kuds or village clubs as they were called, mostly in the city's Dhobi Talao area. They still exist and continue to be a valuable and comforting shelter for migrant workers.
This is a typical kud, which derives from the Portuguese word for room.
Actually, formerly, the British time, people used to come from Goa for a job zone down here. People from each village used to come down, catch a place, and then they formed as a one clubs.
How many clubs would there be in this area?
There were, formerly there were 417 clubs. You will be surprised as to what will be the rent. We are all members. We just pay about 50 rupees the minimum per month.
The trunk is a typical feature of the club, and everybody has one, and you get to keep your stuff here between voyages or from day to day. This is a place that many musicians live in. I have musicians directories from the 1950s, and about 60% or 70% of the people list their addresses as either a flat in Dobitalau or one of the clubs in Dobitalau.
This is at Anthony Gonzalez. Honorable Anthony. My name is Anthony Gonzalez. Song was there. Actually, they are dedicated to him.
My name is Anthony Gonzalez. The reference to Anthony Gonzalez takes us to the wider world of Hindi film music. The Portuguese may not have set up any industries in Goa, but they'd left a legacy of schools which taught Western music, how to play it, read and write it. It had allowed Goan musicians to move from playing classical, opera to jazz. When the British left, as did the Americans who were stationed in India during the war, the culture of jazz began to fade. Then rock and roll took over. Left without a job,